Mhm. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fan Faction. This is episode 10, and today we're going to be talking about Stalker from 1979. So my name is Shane, and I'm joined again by my co-hosts Ben Hardy and Dylan Lennon. So Dylan, this was oh no, sorry, actually Ben, this was your pick. Um, so I think I'm right in saying none of us had, well, a few of us have probably heard about this movie before. Um, I know I had read the book, but it was called by a different name. So this is an adaptation of a book by Russian sci-fi authors called Roadside Picnic. So this is the adaptation. I think I'll go last because I don't want to spoil things about the book, just in case you guys decide to read it. Um, but I'd say Ben, why don't you kick it off? Being your movie, what did you guys think?
I had no idea what to expect when I first start watching it because it's in that very black and white monochrome. It looks a lot older than it is when you first
Mhm.
initially start watching it, and very bleak at the start as well. I was like, what kind of sci-fi is this? Like, there's very little build-up or anything. It's just some lad leaves and goes to a bar, meets two other lads. There's very little character development in the first, like, say, half an hour of it, and a lot
Mhm.
of long and slow shots. But I must say, even though it was long and slow, I was intrigued from the very, very start. Like, this is like nothing I've ever watched before, you know? I just thought it was very, very interesting. And then when they do go into the zone and even the whole journey there, it was very, very cool. And it was just, I don't know, it was just when I went into color and all, and there wasn't really much happening. It was just, I heard it described as like a mood movie where you're not really meant to sort of dissect the story. It's more of how you feel while you're watching it, you know?
Mhm.
So I just sort of, it's hard to explain. I just sort of like was kind of entranced throughout the entire movie, you know? I just thought it was like nothing I've watched before. And some of the scenes and the long shots to just really drew you in, you know? I just thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, it was very, very, very different. Like you said, it was kind of jarring at the start because you get that kind of, it was that like black and white, but there was a yellow tint. It reminded me a lot of Nosferatu, the way that looked. If you've ever seen, images from that movie. And then, like you said, because I was convinced, I was like, this movie's in color. Why is it in black and white? And then that shift um was kind of interesting. I don't know, what was your take on why there was the color shift from black and white to then, once they're in the zone, going to full color?
I don't know. I really don't. It kind of reminds me of The Wizard of Oz at the start, where it's black and
Yeah.
white, and then when they get to Oz, it kind of gets into color. I gathered something to do with um the not the zone itself, but probably the meaning behind it of having faith and possibilities and stuff like that, and everything being out of sync. I don't know. That's why the colors introduced
Yeah.
something different, you know, something like that.
I
But
kind of thought along the same lines as you. I kind of thought maybe it was to do with maybe how bleak everything was for them, how bleak they saw their life back there. The black and white, it did look a bit miserable. And then as soon as, they reach the zone, it's nearly like their whole outlook on life changes and
yeah,
everything
they
becomes
have
colorful and beautiful.
something to believe in, something to strive for, and
Yeah.
that they're just. And I think it's alluded to in the dialogue when they get into the zone. It's like it's not really about the end goal of what you want to accomplish in life. It's more like the journey there, and hence their journey to the zone, to the room in the zone is essentially is their new meaning and purpose in life, you know. So hence why the color
Yeah.
came, you know. So, Dilly, what did you think of it?
Um, I had heard about it. It's been on a list to watch for a very long time, being a former art student. Because I've seen his other film, Solaris, which
Yes.
there's a 7 hour cut of.
Oh
Jeez.
Um,
God.
yeah. But I would agree with the statement that it's a mood movie. I also think you really have to be in the mood to watch this movie. That's not saying anything bad about it because I loved
Yeah.
it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was very, to me, it was near pitch perfect sci-fi. It didn't need all the fancy robots or computers or anything like that. At base level, it was like they've walked into this area, the zone,
Mhm.
which has this. um, potential for optimism from the bleakness, which is really what sci-fi is, you know.
Yeah.
Um, just talking about the color shift in particular, it's very interesting because I did know this beforehand. So this production was plagued with problems.
Mm.
They actually
Okay.
refilmed it about 3 times. Um, and that initial color problem is actually down to the film they used, which was an experimental film at the time, and it wasn't processed properly. It just
No
ended
way.
up, yeah, it just ended up matching the metaphorical tone of what they were going for. But that's why it has that weird greeny gold hue. It's actually the film wasn't processed correctly because it was too experimental. Before it was only ever used with one other production. I can't remember the name of it. But yeah. So that's why they never actually go back to it because they ran out of it.
That's
The
mental.
the story behind the movie is probably
It's
as
insane.
as the movie
Yeah.
itself. He shot it for an entire year with a cinematographer and that film. And then at like a year later, they were looking at the footage and he said, this is unusable. I think it was a type of film that was heavily used in Western movies like Star Wars and all, but the Russian cinema had no experience developing it.
Mm.
And so I think they completely fucked it up. And then he had to go back and shoot everything all over again. And he fired the cinematographer and started over, you know? So
Do you know what that reminds me of? I don't know if you guys will. Ben, I know you've seen some of his movies, but to me, when I was watching it, it seemed like a Russian Terrence Malick movie.
I
Do you
Googled,
know?
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I would agree with that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I Googled Terrence Malick and him, and there's a lot of similarities, you know? Just like
Yeah,
people out there making loads of comparisons between the two. I wonder who came
yeah.
along first.
I would imagine he did. Tarkovsky, or is it Tarkovsky or Tchaikovsky? I can't remember. Is it
Tchaikovsky.
Tarkovsky? Andrei Tarkovsky. Yeah, I think he came before, but like you said, it's not even the way, like there's those long kind of moody shots, but on top of that as well, you have the kind of philosophical,
Mm.
stuff that goes into the movies, which is very prevalent in Terrence Malick movies. Things like the Thin Red Line. There's
Mm.
there's the kind of monologue that goes over, and it's very deep and thought provoking. That's just kind of what I got when I was watching this. Um,
I got that
just
as
to give
well.
maybe the listeners
Yeah.
a kind of overview of the zone, because the actual, I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but I was a little bit disappointed in the actual zone, because you get at the start, you get that kind of description of what the zone is. So they don't really know what happened. It's this area that's been closed off by the government. They think it's some sort of meteorite or some sort of alien visitation. And basically, you have these people called stalkers who go in and bring people to this room to make their wishes come true. But this could be because I'd read the book, but in the book, they go into the zone to basically steal artifacts and then sell them on the black market for profit. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in the book that's not in the movie. You do get action points, and you see some of these things that are alluded to. But in the movie, you don't really get that. You're getting this journey, and it very much feels like it's building towards something, but really nothing really happens, and you don't see evidence of this civilization or meteor that supposedly changed the landscape or
Yeah, you see,
anything like that.
Yeah.
what I did hear is that he read the book, but and he took from it the zone and the room or whatever, but that's where the similarities end. He said
Yeah,
it is very, very loosely based on the book, extremely loosely. He liked the idea of the zone, I think, and
yeah,
that's as far as it went. As for the zone itself, I thought it was grand, you know. I was like the part where they're throwing the bolts wrapped in
Yeah.
white cloth across the grass. I was like, okay, this is very low budget now, isn't it? Like, what do we want?
yeah, yeah.
You
Well,
know?
maybe that's part of it. Maybe it was budgetary restrictions that they just couldn't, do anything that would have been.
You can, yeah, in fairness now, you could hook a bit of fishing line onto that and just pull it.
Mm,
The late 70s, early 80s wasn't beyond that in cinema.
But
no,
in saying
no,
that, I didn't really care at the same time, you know?
yeah.
It felt a bit at times, like, oh, like, but I could buy into it easy enough, you know, because there wasn't really
Mhm.
anything there that was out of place, like some CGI alien or something walking around. It was just normal environment, you know. And maybe that's sort of, I heard some people comparing it to Chernobyl, but Chernobyl was like 7 years later, you know, so there's no
Okay.
comparison there, you know.
Mhm.
There's one scene where there's a bunch of derelict tanks in a field. Remember, there's a shot going through a
Yeah.
car window.
Yeah.
The original scene when they shot it a year before, there was a shit ton more tanks, apparently, so it looked a lot more impressive. But they had to
Mhm.
reshoot it, and the budget was decimated, so they cut a lot of that out, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a bit of a shame because there's stuff in the books that isn't in it that would have been so cool to see
mm,
on screen. In the books, there's this artifact called Hell Slime. And there's a scene where one of the characters steps into the hell slime and it basically like dissolves everything, you know, his legs, and it's so cool, and it's like it's wanted on the black market. I think in the books now, I read it a long time ago, but I think the government is looking to obtain hell slime and they want to use it for weapons purposes.
not very good.
They want to weaponize it. Um, but I don't know, like I read it a long time ago now, but I just remember there were so many cool bits in the books that just they obviously just for whatever reason didn't do it because that wasn't what Tarkovsky wanted in this movie. Even the daughter monkey, like her story is very sad in the books, and you don't really get any context about why she's called monkey or anything like that in the movie. It's quite strange.
It's very much like he read the book and he just lifted. He had his own vision of what he wanted to do. Like, I think the movie's what, an allegory or something for having a meaning in life or faith, and be careful what
Yeah.
you wish for. And if
Mhm.
it does come true, is it really what you wanted all along, you know? Or what is your innermost desire might be what you think it is, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's he saw the zone in that book and he was just like, this works perfectly. We can sort of intertwine that
Yeah.
movie with
Yeah.
the
I
book,
think
you
you
know?
you could really consider this from now knowing what you're saying more about the book, you can really just consider this a philosophical interpretation of that work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's very much like this is a art house philosophy movie. Um, you know, every shot feels like a play. And I think one of the longest singular shots in the movie is when they're actually sitting just outside the room towards the end.
Mm.
That single shot where the weather changes everything, that is 4.5 minutes long, and it's one take.
Yeah.
It has this he in general in his films has this kind of air of the theater of the absurd, or more specifically like Beckett, where you look at Waiting for Godot, right? And the stage directions are this, like in the first half of the play, there is a singular tree with a singular leaf. That's the set for the whole first half of the play. Second half, the leaf falls off. And every shot feels like that in this movie. Like it's long, it lingers. They make they something happens where it's development of the philosophy or of the struggle that they're going through internally, and then they move on to the next part of that discussion or that dialogue. All the action, like it, like that, it builds up to the zone, like the whole bit where they're being shot at, and you're like, "Oh, you know, where are they being shot from?" And they're like, again, they must have been stormtroopers on guard that day because I mean, there wasn't a single fucking bullet going to get anybody.
Bit
Yeah.
where they're trying to get the train started and there's just
Yeah.
one hit in the water. I was like, come on.
But it's all, but yeah, but they're moving very much without massive urgency. So it's a bit like, oh, like they must know the guards are blindfolded or something. Do you know what I mean? Um, and they're like, get in the cart. Yeah, we'll get there eventually. It's fine. Do you know?
Mhm.
But I think as a result of that, there's all this weight to it because the final scene, like the scene that's on the poster, you know, in the sand pit kind of area, um, to me, who's someone who's always seen that image and been like, right, this is going to be on my list to watch. It was probably the scene where I was a bit like, oh, I'm slightly let down by it because
Yeah.
it's there's a badly edited bird shot, which just hands down for a movie that I genuinely like. Um, that shot is piss poor. But it's also the only example we've seen of like time or gravity distortion in the whole movie, pretty
Yeah.
much, with the exception of when the professor goes missing and they circle back. Um, you know, uh, so it was a bit like, oh,
Yeah. I think as well with the meat grinder room that like I mean that's not that's a pretty poor name for that room after them all successfully getting through unscathed. Like I thought when they talked about the stalker's friend Porcupine and the fact that he had to, somebody was sacrificed in that room so that he could get to the room and make his wish. I was just a little confused because it seemed like the stalker was expecting him to die in this meat grinder room, and I don't know how everyone got through okay. I don't know if that was, maybe I missed it. Was that explained?
It was to do with intent, I believe. That like the room or the zone reading true intent as opposed to what they thought was their intent. I think that's because then Porcupine, as it turns out, had somewhat nefarious goals in that he wanted to resurrect somebody.
Yeah.
And the meat grinder, which is just the dirty drain. Because I was expecting that, like, with the meat grinder, like, oh, this is going to be like this film's going to get pretty heavy now, you know. And it's like it's a pipe. It's a pipe with a soft right turn.
I think
Yeah.
I think the fact that the writer he made his way through that and unscathed, maybe he realized that his intention of getting to the room what it actually was, and hence why he didn't really want to go in there. No, maybe. Yeah, because he was very, very hesitant to go in, and he said he wanted to get inspiration to write books again, but underneath that, there's probably some craving for fame or something else that he really wanted, And that's probably why. What do you make the professor wanting to blow it up?
I mean,
to me that made
I get his
sense.
points.
Yeah.
Like, because technically that's your man who's in the system, and he sees all the flaws with the system. So, like, yeah, he will be the one to do it.
I would argue that that might be, I don't know, there's a bit of a kind of contradiction in that if the meat grinder senses bad intentions, you shouldn't be able to get to the room anyway. But I don't know. They obviously don't really know how the meat grinder works. I think everyone's just making assumptions about how the world works, and they really don't know.
Yeah, I think if the rider went through first, I think the other lads are safe to follow him. That's the thing I got. He really got the shit, like the short end of the stick where he had to do all these things. But then the stalker set him up to do all these things as well. He gave him the long match on purpose.
Yeah.
You're talking about it at the end. I don't know why he gave it to him on purpose. Maybe he knew that, or maybe he's just going to sacrifice him because he didn't think his intentions were.
Part of me thinks it is that it's like the stalker just has to kind of make a choice then on the day. You know, who really, he just has to toss a coin and kind of go, okay, if this area is going to sacrifice somebody, because he's technically been in the zone many times. So in a way, you're kind of like, this guy is a bit of a villain.
Yeah, he's playing God essentially.
Yeah.
Decide who has their dreams come true or not,
Yeah.
So I found that part very interesting as well. He was
sorry?
Remember when they first came into the zone, he goes off walking into the long grass and he lies down for like 2 minutes. I have no idea what the hell he was doing. Did it ever explain what he was doing there?
No. But that whole sequence was a bit like this. It's again, for a movie that didn't necessarily disappoint me, that's something that I felt could have made it onto the editing floor.
Yeah.
Because it's like monologue with dramatic action. Like, they've just gone into the zone, and when you first enter the zone makes you sleepy.
Yeah.
For some reason.
I took it as like he was so happy to be back. He was just kind of lying there taking it all in. But that was my interpretation.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. That's probably exactly what it was. He's like, he's reveling in the fact that he's playing God again or something,
He was probably the strangest character. I liked the writer and the professor. I wasn't sure how to feel about Stalker.
He also looked quite strange. He had good screen presence. He's not your
He's
classical
Yeah,
Hollywood looking guy, you know?
like there was
Russian
something a
Woody
bit off.
Harrelson.
Yeah, something a bit off him all the time.
Yeah.
Russian Woody Harrelson.
He likes
Woody Harrelson, if he aged like he used teabag.
if he didn't.
Oh,
Did you hear about what happened after they finished the movie?
I heard that the director died. Did he?
Well, yeah, they think he
Loads
died
of
from
them
the
died.
exposure from because so that scene of a waterfront with all the foam on it, that was
Uh,
like waste product from a factory that they were filming out around the back of,
okay.
and I
So I
think
think
that's what killed a lot of people.
till like I think three of the characters died of cancer or something, and the director
Wow.
did as well. So all
Like
from
any of the three main actors.
let me see here. I think a fair few people died from it. Well, the
Because I
lead,
think one of the actors I think has been in the guy who plays the writer. He's been in a load of Tarkovsky's other movies, but obviously if Tarkovsky died the year after, then yeah, he could have died as well.
the lead lad didn't die to 95. Anatoly Solonitsyn, the writer, he
Yeah,
died in 82 at 47. Lung
so that
cancer.
could be one of them. There you go. It's a
Yeah, but
very strange movie. Almost seems cursed in a way. It wasn't meant to be made.
I think it was yeah. So they filmed it three times. I do think it is a great philosophical piece, and I think where it lets itself down is the fact that it is a hugely philosophical piece, because like that's a for me as someone who dabbled in philosophy in college, um, that's where it felt let itself down because you can you can go into a stumbling block of philosophy where it's a bit like uh, one of the biggest arguments of that is Magritte's "This is not a pipe," and it's a picture of a pipe, but he's telling you it's not a pipe. He's telling you all the potential of everything that it could ever be. Then when you go and make a movie that's like that, you're a bit like you're just circling. You're not even circling a drain. You're just circling around the same thing all the time, and coupled with the exceptional beauty of these very long singular shots. While it is amazing to look at, it can also let you down. Like, because there was a lot of lying in puddles as well.
It was.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of lying in puddles,
It
and
was-
you're like, there's a perfectly dry bit over there, and you're lying in the river for the sake of philosophical dialogue.
yeah.
I didn't mind it though. I didn't mind it. I think comparing him to Terrence Malick again, he can be very heavy-handed in his philosophical approach with explicitly having a narrator explain all these philosophical woes while these beautiful
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
going on. This movie just lets you just think what you're thinking. We're not going to hold your hand through this, you know. Maybe the water represents some kind of I don't know I don't know. There's some philosophical meaning to it, but we're not going to tell you what it is. Figure it out for yourself. And I think it kind of worked, you know, in a way.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wasn't
I
it?
feel like I have to say, from when they got just outside the room, I think is the best part of the movie.
Same.
Because
Yeah.
then when the phone starts ringing and things like that, and you're like, so is this real? Is this the zone? They're right outside, they realize they're right outside this point of no return where they have to go in. And then, again, you're looking at that 4.5 minute long shot from technically inside the room.
Yeah.
So the room is watching them the whole time, and now we are the room watching them just on the precipice of getting to fulfill their desire. That is very powerful.
Yeah.
To turn the viewer
It's a really
into
interesting idea.
the room itself is a bit like that's heavy.
I didn't really like it is breaking the fourth wall. It didn't really come across at the time for me. But yeah, the question's a fascinating one. If you were in that position, not really knowing if you want to know what your deepest desire is, or do you even know what that is? And can you be selfless, and or it's an interesting concept. But I think what you said, Dill, is kind of right in that I think he had this philosophical idea that he wanted to put in a movie and just kind of use the book Roadside Picnic as like a platform to just get his idea out there. Like really, I don't know, like that could have just been, I mean, they could have had that philosophical conversation anywhere,
Yep.
They could have.
Yeah, it's interesting.
What did you think of your one moving the glass at the very end on the table?
Well, or did she? Was it the train?
Oh yeah, that's a very good
Well,
point.
that is the
I think
debate. But
I
I
think it
think
was meant to be ambiguous.
if you reference the dialogue where they go on about stalkers and how stalkers are born, and they're born very different, they are considered mutants.
Yeah.
So I think it is this whole thing of like they are experiencing within going into the zone, they are experiencing this heightened awareness of place and experiencing other people's search for purpose. So they are quintessentially these shepherds of desire or towards the future. So naturally the daughter is the evolution of that. She is born of a stalker, but she herself is disfigured and hidden away. And naturally she is the next step in the philosophical debate of, okay, so if we look at it on this standpoint of the stalker is born with a almost divine purpose, what's the next stage of that? It's the zone and the room breaking out from that area and affecting then the next generation. And I think I'm of the belief she moved the glass. Because one thing in particular about this movie, I love the amount of visible and clearly defined dust that's in shots. And you see it in particular at that ending scene. The dust in the film and in there is absolutely stunning, but it's there to tell you that she is beyond. I think he's showing you with the frame more than he's willing to say. He is actually giving you an answer. She moved the glass.
Yeah.
Because
I think
everything around her now is so heightened.
Yeah.
That's
In
the
the
zone.
book,
The zone is now the people.
Yeah. In the book, she does now. So basically, in the book, the reason they call her Monkey is because when she's born, she's kind of covered in this kind of light, kind of brown hair, and she's got these really black eyes, so they nickname her Monkey. Very much like a term of endearment, like it's not meant in like a bad way, towards her. They love her. But in the books, that's basically his reason for going to the room, is basically because she's slowly, as she gets older, she's slowly losing her humanity. She's losing the ability to speak. So like you said, she is a mutant. Now there's never any telekinesis or anything that I can remember that's shown in the book. But that maybe is where, like, I don't know that the stalker's intentions really make sense for why he's going into the zone. I think leaving the daughter out of it kind of it's a strange decision, like that would have been a perfect reason for him to go. My daughter's unwell, I'm going to go to the room and I'm going to wish her back to health. That's a compelling storyline to have, whereas that's why I don't think I warned him as a character. He was a strange one.
Yeah, I didn't want him either. I just found I found it very hard to discern his intentions of actually going there, and what the Stalker was.
Well,
But
he kept going on about like nobody has any hope anymore, and I'm doing this so that people can get their hope back, and it's like it's a bit flimsy. I mean, just doesn't really make sense. Like I just don't understand. Yeah, I don't know. To me, it doesn't really make sense. Whereas the writer and the professor, I get their motives for wanting to go.
Or do you get their motives? And do you
Well, we think
really
we
get
do.
what the Stalker's motive is? And that's maybe what the whole thing's about,
Yeah. Well, that's it. Maybe
Yeah, I
they're
think
lying,
for this
or
the stalker, yeah.
sorry, Dill.
Or It's like, or he's going to say something. No, I think for the stalker, I think the problem is he's become addicted to the challenge of the zone.
Mm.
Um, like if you look at it, the moments that he's skittish and worried, and you can see that in the way that he kind of very subtly changes the way he kind of fumbles with the cogs and cloth. Um, I think he himself is searching for this idea of why is he so attracted to going there when he knows it is so dangerous. And it's
Yeah.
because he's trying to maybe understand what's wrong with his daughter, explain a bit about himself. And again, from the wife, from his dialogue, his wife's dialogue, where they're like, they're born very different.
Mhm.
And so maybe he has that in his head and all that philosophical debate of like, why was I born to desire this space? Even though it only happened like 8 years ago and I'm 40. um,
Yeah, yeah.
it,
I think
but
there's a very long
yeah,
shot at
I,
the
I
start of
don't
the
know.
movie where he's staring at his daughter and his wife before he goes to the zone. So maybe that's an indication of his reasoning
Hmm.
for going, just to sort of figure out more about it and maybe what's happened with his daughter, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe what is why he never goes fully in to the room either. He's just scared of what his true intentions might actually be, you know? And
Yeah.
didn't the writer say at one point that if he was a writer, if he was to be the best writer of all time, his motivation for writing then would just be gone, you know? Because he's
Yeah.
already done everything that needs to be done. So he's just like, okay, I don't care anymore. So
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Overall, it was very, very interesting though. Like it's been on my mind all week, and I don't know why I kept thinking about it.
Yeah.
Maybe because I just haven't watched anything like that in a long, long time, you know?
Yeah. It is very thought provoking. For me, it was like thought provoking and a little bit frustrating. But again, I think my viewing was maybe slightly soured by the fact that I had read the book and I really, really enjoyed the book.
Mm.
And this was just so different. I didn't know it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a pretty faithful adaptation. So I think that brought it down a little for me. Um, well, what do you guys think then? Score wise, or do you have anything else kind of that you wanted to talk about in particular? Any scenes or anything?
Not really,
Um,
no.
no, not really. I think the best part of the movie is when we're reaching the crescendo and they're just outside the room. Um, and again, I love the flip of shots of again that 4.5 minutes where we are the room looking at them.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the where it struggles is that it's too philosophical for its own good. And sometimes you don't have to explicitly give an answer. You do have to allude to there being an answer. So if you look at like, say, for example, other elements, other films that have that slightly philosophical element to them, the one that's jumping into my mind would be Inception and the ending of Inception.
Mhm.
We're only left with a yes or is he in the dream or is he not? That's the
Mhm.
only question we're left with. In Stalker, we're left with like everyone's real intentions,
Yeah.
what everyone went in to look for, the reason behind all that. We're kind of left with a little bit too much, and then we're sat there with the wife who is breaking the fourth wall. She's now talking to us at the end of the movie and saying, "Well, look, better to have an exciting and frustrating life than a mundane and boring one."
Yeah.
More or less, is kind of
You're
paraphrasing that.
paraphrasing.
Very much paraphrasing, but it's like, okay, so has she just told us the whole point of this movie? Do you know? So it not
Yeah.
looking to find an answer there, but for me, this is where the kind of struggles came of it. I did enjoy it. Would I rush back to watch it? No, I'd really have to sit down and go, right, I'm here drinking Rioja and I feel like having a philosophical argument. So I'm
Yeah.
going to watch a 3 hour movie. Um, So score wise, I'm gonna put it's a 7.5 for me. I did really enjoy it. I did, but yeah, like
7.5 out of 5, Dill, yeah?
Oh, we're doing it at 5, yeah. 7.5 out of 5, yeah. Why did I think it was out of 10? I'm two glasses in, lads. Apologies. The quality's gone down in this show. It would kind of be it would be straight. It would be 2.8 to 3.
Hmm.
Just because of that, it leaves you with too much philosophical debate. It should narrow itself down throughout the movie. But it again, it leaves you with, did she or the train do it? It's up to your philosophical take of the rest of the movie. Is the wife talking to you, or is she just talking to herself, having a philosophical fucking debate with herself over a fag?
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
me, I think I'm a sucker for these kind of philosophical movies, and I'm not really looking for an answer from them or even an illusion of an answer. I think if the theme sort of the overall questions it asks and the dialogue in the movie and the cinematography, if it all fits together and sort of pulls you in and sort of hypnotizes you for 2.5, 3 hours and makes you sort of think about the questions it's raising. I think that's enough to really satisfy me. I absolutely loved it. Like it obviously had its flaws, but I just kept going back and thinking about it during the week, and I don't know why. Um, I just think it was beautifully shot. I've never watched anything like it before. Score wise, it's going to be controversial, but I'm going to give it a 5, mainly because I really, really enjoyed it, and I'd go back and watch it several more times to try and get more meaning out of it. And I think if you
Mhm.
rewatch it again, it'll probably be more. It's like listening to a prog rock song. It's like 15 minutes long. You're not going to get it first time round, you know?
No,
But if you keep
no.
listening to it, you're like, oh, there's the hook again, and there's that riff that comes in again for the. It'll probably start to make a bit more sense after a while. And I think this is a kind of movie that to keep on watching and get more and more out of, you know?
Yeah. I think you both have good points there, because I think what Dylan's saying is there is a lot of questions, but at the same time, maybe the director's intention is to just elicit this type of debate and, what, like, leave it in your hands. What do you guys think it means? Like, you have to find your own answers to these questions.
I would agree with that statement exactly now. And I know if I was still in our college, it would be a 5 out of 5 movie. I'm going
You'd
no,
have to
hands down.
pander to
I
your,
know, because
your peers.
when I'm in that, if I was in that mode,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, this is one of the greatest philosophical debates in existence.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays, not even nowadays, but I think you do have to channel it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I
Shane,
think
what do
I
you
think
got?
for me, I think I'd give it a 3. I think I'm taking my book judgments out of this, because I think if I'd watched the movie without seeing the book, how would I feel about it? I give it a 3 because I think it's a strange movie. I was kind of hooked at the start, and then there's it's kind of a whole lot of nothing for about an hour. Um, like, I know there was like philosophical parts in the middle, but a lot of that kind of just went over my head. It was really the last, like you said, the last half an hour where I really was like, okay, this is interesting.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, ultimately for me, it kind of gets bogged down in the middle. And I think they just allude to something interesting happening the whole time. They're building, 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 and for me, it kind of just falls a bit flat. This world that should be very, very exciting, isn't really. It just looks like